Imagine an island paradise, Grand Cayman Island, where the turquoise waters meet sugar white sands, the perfect backdrop for a rapid takeover. From 0 iguanas in 2000 to a whopping 1.8 million just 18 years later, it's a wild story of how these ancient creatures went from nowhere to everywhere without any help or large introduction. The question is, what triggered this green iguana invasion and took over the island? Let's dive into the real-life horror show of how a handful of pet iguanas turned into a full-blown invasion force, not only in Grand Cayman Island, but also in Florida. It all started with some seemingly harmless pets that got set free and then thrived on their own. Fast forward to today, thousands of these green menaces are roaming freely, taking over the Sunshine State. But here's the kicker, experts say it's possible there might be even more iguanas out there than we can count, which makes stopping this invasion seem like a daunting task. So where did these Central American natives end up in Florida? Well, they initially slithered into the state as pets. It's no secret that many Floridians fell head over heels for their charming looks and intriguing demeanor. These green iguanas were brought back by travelers from places like Grand Cayman Island or even bought from pet stores. But things took a drastic turn when some of these lizards got set free and found themselves thriving in Florida's tropical climate. Before long, the once tiny population grew into an overwhelming force that has been causing quite a ruckus ever since. We're talking property damage, disrupted ecosystems, and even potential threats to native species. The vast artificial canals in South Florida served as express highways for these green wanderers, effortlessly connecting them to new territories and enabling their rapid expansion. It's ironic but true. The very infrastructure built by humans inadvertently became a pathway for these reptilian invaders to take over. Now that this reality has sunk in, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission is urging residents of South Florida to join forces and help reduce the iguana population as much as possible. Florida, a haven for the unwelcome. It seems we have an entire ecosystem of unwanted guests, including these green iguanas. The Sunshine State is home to an overwhelming number of non-native species, and it's no surprise given its long history of being a global hub for trade and immigration. But let's dig deeper into what makes Florida so attractive to these invaders and how the presence of green iguanas is just another piece in this ecological puzzle. The U.S. is currently at the top of the invasive species leaderboard, holding a significant lead above New Zealand and Australia. As of 2016, our nation reported an astonishing 171 documented invasive species, with France following closely behind at 927. However, recent research has brought some alarming news. By 2022, the number of recorded invasive species in the U.S. had skyrocketed to over 6,500, and it's clear that these unwanted visitors are taking over at an unprecedented rate. You won't believe the invasion happening right here at home. The United States is facing a staggering crisis with over 6,500 documented invasive species. That's more than 6 times what was reported just a few years ago. Feral wild boars are wreaking havoc in many states, causing property damage and posing threats to public safety. But they're not alone. Other sneaky invaders like Burmese pythons and Brazilian pepper trees are secretly taking over Florida, earning it the nickname invasive species capital. The economic cost of this invasion is mind-boggling. $20 billion annually. That's a significant dent in our national pocketbook. It's time to take action and uncover what else is hiding in plain sight, waiting to cause damage. Florida is at the epicenter of an environmental invasion, leading the nation with its staggering number of non-native species. A whopping 26% of all species here aren't originally from this Sunshine State. With its ideal warm subtropical climate and comfortable humidity levels, Florida has become the ultimate home sweet home for many unwanted invaders, pushing local native species to the brink of extinction. This perfect storm has made it a haven for non-native reptiles and amphibians. More than anywhere else in the world, Florida's unique blend as a global crossroads for exotic pets and international food trade has created an environment where unwanted critters from nearly every corner of our planet can find their way into this subtropical paradise. It only takes a tiny slip-up, just a couple of loose animals escaping or being callously released by their owners, and before long, these newcomers establish themselves as uninvited invaders, wreaking havoc on native species and ecosystems. The alarming reality is that it doesn't take much effort to prevent the emergence of new invasive species, but unfortunately, people consistently let opportunities slip through their fingers. Here's how it goes down. We get that first glimpse of something entirely foreign in Florida, Abi. Maybe it's an unusual bird or lizard showing up unexpectedly, causing a stir among locals and tourists alike. The news spreads, people share their excitement on social media, and before long, this new addition to the Sunshine State becomes the talk of the town. But here's where things take a turn. Scientists start sounding the alarm, pointing out the potential risks these newcomers pose to native wildlife and ecosystems. Unfortunately, by then it's usually too late. the invasive species has already established itself, begun breeding, and started causing irreversible damage. Florida's notorious history with invasive species is no secret. Many unwanted critters have made their homes here, wreaking havoc on ecosystems and causing damage to properties along the way. Diseases don't help either. The Sunshine State has earned its reputation as the hub of invasives, and it seems like this cycle repeats every year with a new group of species. But then came the green iguanas. At first, they didn't seem much of a threat since these reptiles aren't exactly built for cold weather. It seemed like an easy solution. Let's just leave it to Mother Nature to freeze them out. Iguanas can't handle the chill as their bodies rely on external heat sources to function. That's why you'll usually find them basking in the sun. But what Floridians didn't realize was that they had a resilient opponent on their hands, and the green iguana population just kept growing. Now, when temperatures plummet below 45 degrees Fahrenheit, something pretty funny happens. These cold-blooded critters fall into a sort of deep freeze-induced hibernation or torpor, and all that's left is an adorable, lifeless reptile on your sidewalk. Florida's uninvited party crashers, the green iguanas, think they're masters of surviving cold snaps by entering a state of torpor that keeps them breathing and functioning but grounded. However, their attempt to stay safe by dozing off until it warms up to 50 degrees backfires in the most comical yet concerning way. These sleepy reptiles lose their grip on branches, tumbling down onto unsuspecting Floridians' heads, cars, and sidewalks. While getting an iguana bonk might be memorable, this invasion spells trouble for both locals and the environment as they wreak havoc on gardens, damage canals, and push out native species that originally called Florida home. Causing costly damages to residential and commercial landscapes is just icing on the cake. In Florida, the green iguana invasion is causing quite a ruckus literally. With their impressive climbing skills and insatiable appetites, they're scaling buildings, toppling trees, and even making off with prized garden flowers. But that's not all. These voracious reptiles are burrowing into sidewalks, foundations, and canal banks, leaving behind gaping holes and expensive repairs. If that wasn't enough, iguanas have a tendency to leave unwanted presents on docks, boats, patios, decks, even in swimming pools. But perhaps the most alarming issue is their taste for rare plants like the endangered Miami blue butterfly's habitat in Bahia Honda State Park or the local species of tree snails. It's clear these iguanas are wreaking havoc on Florida's delicate ecosystem. Florida residents are up against it. The green iguana invasion is putting other species on the endangered list, with these lizards making a meal out of rare plants and even local tree snails. But here's another shocker. Despite being primarily herbivores, green iguanas play a role in driving some species to extinction. On top of that, they're also a salmonella carrier, contaminating everything from water sources to household surfaces with their droppings. And trust us, you don't want to imagine finding one of these potentially infectious animals in your home, let alone in the most unexpected places like your toilet, where it could be lurking more often than you think. Let's talk about the flip side of invasive green iguanas. They're actually victims of invasion themselves. You can find this in one of the most iconic and fragile ecosystems on Earth, the Galapagos Islands. 2 centuries ago, the majestic land iguana thrived here. But after Charles Darwin's visit back in 1835, these incredible creatures vanished from San Diego Island in Ecuador, a heartbreaking loss that left the ecosystem forever changed. By the time an expedition arrived in 1906, it was too late. The Galapagos land iguanas were gone, victims of their own home being taken over by non-native species. The story of the Galapagos land iguana's near extinction serves as a stark reminder of our role in shaping Earth's ecosystems. You see, it all began when we unintentionally introduced non-native species like wild pigs, cats, goats, and donkeys to their home island through human activities. These invasive creatures caused devastating damage by destroying the iguana's food sources and even hunting them down for a meal. For nearly 2 centuries, hope seemed lost, but conservation efforts have given the Galapagos land iguana a second chance. In 2019, a remarkable 3,000 individuals were reintroduced to San Diego Island, with scientists predicting that their return will bring about a positive transformation in the ecosystem. However, there's another unique and fascinating species on this island, the marine iguana, whose existence is now under threat due to these same invasive species brought by humans. Scientists refer to the marine iguana's struggles against introduced invaders as ecological naivete, a term that highlights their limited ability to develop effective strategies against these new threats. The arrival of dogs on the Galapagos Islands over 100 years ago marked the beginning of this challenge for these creatures. As it stands, dogs pose an immediate danger with no clear defense mechanism available to the marine iguanas. While they have learned to recognize and evade natural land predators such as the Galapagos hawk, short-eared owl, lava gull, herons, and Galapagos racer snakes by freezing in place, a particularly effective tactic against blind snakes, Invasive species like pigs and cats remain an insurmountable threat. The Galapagos marine iguana is facing a harsh reality due to ecological navete, leaving them extremely vulnerable against introduced invaders like dogs. These threats have pushed their survival on the brink of extinction, making conservation efforts highly imperative. In stark contrast, Florida finds itself in a different predicament with an overpopulation of iguanas, prompting the need for professional removal and capture services. As these creatures become a significant nuisance, experts propose innovative solutions such as habitat manipulation or humane harassment techniques like removing attractive plants, filling holes, or employing noise-making devices like wind chimes to discourage their presence. Florida's got a unique problem on its hands: an overabundance of non-native green iguanas. Unlike their Galapagos cousins facing extinction threats, Floridians are dealing with these reptiles as pests. While it might seem counterintuitive to consider killing creatures that seem harmless, remember, we're the ones who inadvertently created a perfect environment for them by providing ideal habitat and food sources. For those determined iguanas that just won't take the hint, shining reflective surfaces can be an effective deterrent. They simply don't like being stared down by a mirror-like reflection. And if you've got a particularly persistent iguana problem, a quick blast of water might do the trick to scare them off for good. However, for those that continue to invade and overstay their welcome, Florida allows landowners with permission or hunters on designated public lands in South Florida to humanly dispatch these unwanted guests. As these non-native green iguanas take over Florida's landscape, it raises a crucial question: is killing them actually helping restore ecological balance, or are hunters simply adding to their hunting tally? The reality is that these reptiles cause significant damage by damaging property and outcompeting native wildlife for resources. Pet green iguanas in the Sunshine State now face the same fate as other invasive species, with Florida officially banning them as pets since April 2021. Existing pet owners must ensure their iguanas are tagged with tracking devices to comply with new regulations. With local TV stations like NBC6 South Florida ranking iguanas among the top 3 scariest invasive species in the state, it's clear that Floridians have a serious problem on their hands, one that requires responsible action rather than just viewing them as exotic pets or hunting prey. Let's dive into why the striking yet invasive peacock landed a spot on NBC6 South Florida's scariest invasive species list. It may seem surprising since peacocks aren't native to South Florida, originating from Sri Lanka, other parts of Asia, and even Africa. However, their numbers have boomed in the region and now freely roam some areas, making them quite common sights. These birds are known for damaging property with their loud calls and destructive courtship displays, which can strip bark from trees and break branches. In addition to causing problems, peacocks pose a threat to native wildlife by competing for food resources and potentially carrying diseases that could be detrimental to local ecosystems. As we continue to discuss invasive species, it's essential to remember the impact they have on the environment, even if their presence seems glamorous or exotic. But beneath their stunning appearance and charming presence lies a harsh reality. These exotic birds have been thriving for almost 2 decades in South Florida, largely due to a surprising reason. Despite efforts by wildlife officials to control their population through trapping or killing methods since the 90s, many peacocks continue to roam free. Why? Simply put, people love them. Residents enjoy the beauty and allure these birds bring to their neighborhoods, treating them like local mascots. This affection for peacocks is so strong that it often outweighs any potential negative impact they might have on the environment, leading wildlife experts to conclude that protecting them has limited practical benefits. Fast forward to today, a self-proclaimed peacock capital of South Florida, where these birds aren't just roosting, they're ruling the streets. Wadeview Park in Orlando is a peacock paradise, teeming with majestic creatures strutting their stuff on rooftops and lawns alike. And if you try to dispute their ownership, well, good luck arguing against that unmistakable strut and stare of these proud bird overlords. But let's be real, when you hit triple digits in your neighborhood, that's no longer a compliment, it's an invasion. Just 10 years back, these vibrant birds were largely seen as charming additions to our surroundings, their iridescent feathers and majestic calls adding some serious charm to the local ecosystem. But now, with numbers multiplying 10 times over, peacock populations have turned from pleasant to problematic. Their once welcome presence has morphed into a full-blown crisis in many communities, leaving residents scrambling for solutions to reclaim their backyards and neighborhoods. But here's the thing, those stunning peacocks aren't just eye candy, they can turn from pretty faces to problem birds really quick. With a strong sense of territory, these birds defend their ground with aggression and won't back down easily. They even see humans as threats to their nests, prompting them to attack. And we've all been guilty of turning a blind eye. Who wouldn't want a peacock strutting around their neighborhood? But the reality is, they can cause some serious damage, destroyed property, piles of droppings that are far from fragrant, and those ear-piercing mating calls that sound like cats on a mission to shatter glass. So, what happens when this charming facade turns out to be more menace than majesty? Now, picture this: hundreds of these birds wreaking havoc everywhere. Sidewalks become hazardous due to their slippery droppings. Driveways, patios are left contaminated and treacherous. The consequences: slippery messes causing accidents that'll leave you frustrated and dreading stepping out the door. But hold on to your hat, because things get even wilder. Peacocks have a peculiar habit of mistaking car doors and windows for rivals. Yes, they literally attack their reflections. So, if you've ever seen peacocks near cars, now you know what's going on behind those fierce eyes. The battle for dominance is all in their heads. As these birds continued wreaking havoc in suburban areas, residents were left with no choice but to take drastic measures. The first thought was to catch them, but that led to another problem. Where would they go? Peafowl are such an unusual sight outside of farms or nature reserves that releasing them back into the wild doesn't make sense either. Zoos aren't a solution, as they already have their own unique animal collections, and euthanasia just seemed too heart-wrenching. So, to prevent further population growth, communities turn to a rather unconventional yet compassionate approach: vasectomies for these majestic birds. You're probably wondering why a vasectomy is chosen over neutering for these majestic birds instead of the more common procedure for pets like cats and dogs. The reasoning behind this might seem counterintuitive at first, but trust us, it's science-backed. Vasectomies aren't just about making one male bird sterile, they have a much broader impact on the peafowl population. Since male peacocks are known to be polygamous, with each of them potentially mating with up to 10 females, this simple procedure effectively neutralizes their breeding potential for that number of birds in the community. One of the most surprising aspects about this bold attempt is that it tackles population control through vasectomies on male peafowl, which might seem unusual at first. But here's why: unlike neutering these birds, which would alter their natural behaviors by lowering testosterone levels and essentially turning them into less dominant, less attractive males, a vasectomy leaves everything intact. They're vibrant displays for females, the dominance hierarchies, it all stays, but without the unwanted increase in population. This innovative strategy is being tested as we speak, making this project potentially history's first ever large-scale trial of vasectomies on wild animals. It turns out traditional methods like culling and relocation aren't doing the trick. So, these scientists have thought outside the box by turning to vasectomies on male peafowl. This procedure is a game changer because it doesn't mess with their natural behaviors, keeping those stunning displays of courtship intact. They'll still strut around for females, establish dominance, all while preventing overpopulation. What we're witnessing here could become the first ever large-scale trial of vasectomies in wild animals, a truly groundbreaking approach to population control.